Welcome all to my paranormal closet where all the stories and magic happens. Today's guest is the author of a book on astral projection. The book details the journeys he has been on as an out-of-body explorer over a span of 2 decades to higher dimensions and his encounters and interactions with non-physical entities. Another interesting thing about this book is it's an instructional manual, sort of, in that it teaches the reader techniques and methods to achieve their own out of body states. Please join me in welcoming Vincent Field. Hi, Vincent.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you. For the listening audience, an out of body experience is defined as a sensation of being outside one's own body, typically floating and being able to observe oneself from a distance. I have to tell you, I'm excited and intrigued. I've always been fascinated with out of body experiences and had a few spontaneous ones of my own while dreaming, but I've never ventured beyond floating up in the sky and looking around. At least I think I haven't. Is it possible that I don't remember?
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone um, has out of body experiences that are usually not remembered. And I guess just to jump right in, um, we project from our bodies every time we fall asleep. It is a natural phenomenon, and astral projection or an out of body experience is essentially just being aware of this natural process that happens. And so, for an astral projection, typically you want to enter a state in which your body is asleep and your mind is awake. And from there, the projection occurs. You leave the body, you enter higher dimensions of reality, and so this projection process takes place every time we go to sleep. But
Hmm.
usually, our consciousness also falls asleep, so we're unaware of it. So the key is to keep your mind awake, and then you become aware of these projections.
Oh, okay. So I'm actually doing it, but I'm just not remembering it, is what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
The times that I do have a recollection, I've literally flown up above myself through the roof of my house, up into the sky above my house, and can feel the wind around me, can see the stars in the sky, and I'll be observing as if I'm in an airplane, but without the plane surrounding my body and keeping me safe. It's just me up there in the air. And I'm looking around and feeling that breeze, and it feels wonderful, but it's frightening all at the same time. And I think that because of that fear, it kept me from going further or moving on. But you're saying that I have, and I just don't remember it.
Yes, everyone projects from the body. It's a natural process.
How do I remember it? I want to remember it. I want to go places and remember that I've been there.
Yeah, well, it's essentially a matter of keeping your mind awake as your body falls asleep. And there are different techniques, different methods to do that. Um, the easiest is in the early morning, typically a couple hours before you would normally wake up. So let's say after 5 or 6 hours of sleep. Um, and there are different variations of this early morning technique. The first one I used is commonly called wake back to bed. So you wake up and then you go back to bed. It sounds simple enough, and it really is. So what I would do, what I first learned to do with this one particular technique was you wake up after 6 hours, you stay awake for an hour, then you go back to bed and you do a particular meditation, and um, the projection is induced through this meditation, which essentially um, allows your mind to remain awake as the body falls back to sleep. So this one particular meditation that I did, and that I did this for quite some time, and it's very effective, is a type of third eye meditation with affirmations. So you focus on your third eye chakra, right in the middle of your eyebrows, not on the surface, but actually like inside your head. You focus all of your awareness and really try to feel that area in your head, and you repeat affirmations. And the affirmations are designed to program your subconscious mind. And so affirmations such as "My mind is awake and my body is asleep," or "I am consciously leaving my body. I'm aware as I project from my body." Things like that. These are designed to program your subconscious mind to produce this result. And like I said, it's very effective.
Hmm. Interesting. I'll have to try that. Well, I know that out of body experiences are quite common among near death experiencers. For the listeners, a near death experiencer is someone who has died for several moments and come back. Oftentimes, after they're revived, they'll relay an out of body experience where they observed, say, medical crew working diligently to revive them. They explain they watched as the event was taking place from above, looking down. But what some people don't realize is that out of body experiences are quite common at night, as you've just mentioned, when we're dreaming, but can also be induced at will, like you've just mentioned. And I find that very interesting. Do you remember when your first out of body experience was? And if so, where did you go?
Yeah, I definitely remember that. It was when I was 14 years old. Um, I had read about out of body experiences on the internet. I was new to the concept and I thought it was so cool. I wanted to do it myself. I found a technique, and within a week of trying, I was able to successfully project from my body. And it was a pretty standard out of body experience. I floated out of my body. I saw the room around me, and I saw my body in the bed, and I flew through the window, through the closed window, out into the sky. And it was nighttime, and it was you know all dark. Everything looked pretty much like it does in the physical world. I just flew around, explored. You know, nothing too spectacular happened, but just the experience itself of being in that state and being fully conscious is incredible without having anything magical happen during the experience itself. Just being in that state, yeah, is just mind blowing.
Weren't you afraid that you wouldn't be able to get back into your body?
No, I wasn't afraid about that. That's um, it's a common misconception, I guess. Some people are afraid of that, but I did a little research into this kind of experience beforehand, and I read that it's pretty much impossible to get stuck out of body unless your physical body dies. So let's say you're having an astral projection, and like a meteor falls on your house and crushes your
Oh,
body. Then you'll be stuck out of body because, like you mentioned, near
I
death
wouldn't want to think
experiences.
about that.
Well, a near death experience is essentially the same as an out of body experience. The only difference being that in one, your body is dead, the other, your body is alive and healthy, right? But during both experiences, it's the same process. Your consciousness projects from the body into higher dimensions of reality.
So when you're on your travels, are you alone or no?
Well, um, sometimes you are, or it appears that you are, and sometimes you're not. I've had experiences where um, I've I've traveled with guides. I've had experiences where I'm actually pulled out of my body by entities in these other dimensions. Um, and once you start to enter higher dimensions, you will experience a connection with uh, a higher aspect of your own consciousness that you realize is always present with you. You're just unaware of it. And when I say higher dimensions, essentially reality exists as an entire spectrum of different dimensions. So you can consider the physical world to be like the base level dimension. And so once you have an out of body experience, your consciousness enters dimensions that exist like higher in the spectrum than the physical dimension. And so within this spectrum of non-physical dimensions or astral dimensions, you have lower level dimensions and you have higher level dimensions. And so typically the lower level dimensions appear a lot like the physical world. But as you get higher and higher in this spectrum, reality starts to diverge from what we're used to in the physical world, and things get very unique and different and abstract and increasingly more like beautiful, and like you'll experience these higher level emotions like and states of consciousness like bliss and unity with like all of consciousness, and it gets really incredible.
I've read somewhere that when you're leaving your body, you're connected to what they've described as this fragile silvery cord, and that's a way of getting you back into your body. Is that true, or is that just old wives' tale? Or
Well, I can't recall ever seeing a silver cord. Um, I mean, from what I understand, it's more of a projection of an expectation that you'll have, because in reality, the nature of our consciousness and the connection between like the physical body and the astral body or the energy body is so much more complex. Like, some people have the idea that during an out of body experience, the soul leaves the body and the body is like temporarily like empty or like a shell in a sense. But that's not the case. Actually, what happens is that your consciousness, it does remain in the body, but it kind of duplicates itself as the projection takes place. It's like a copy of your consciousness, or like your consciousness splits off into multiple aspects or multiple layers or levels. And so it's not just a projection into one particular um, dimension in the astral, but it's actually a very complex, like multi-layered projection process in which aspects of your consciousness project into various levels of non-physical reality simultaneously. And so typically, we'll just have a focus in one particular level of reality. But through practice and development, you can gain the ability to perceive multiple levels simultaneously, and you can switch back and forth between them. And through experiments like that, you begin to understand how complex the reality actually is. So
it sure sounds that way. I mean, I know that experiments are done to test and understand out of body experiencing. For example, if you were doing this experiment with members of a group of people, say, and you were paired up with someone, and it's the responsibility of your partner to say, set something up in their home, and you would travel to their home and be able to see what they've done for yourself, and then relay it once you're back in your body, kind of learning that you can do this. I understand it. People are testing and practicing it. And sometimes some of it even call it time travel to do such experiments as well, kind of to help that person who's doing that out of body experience to understand that they've actually succeeded, that they were successful by pointing out exactly what that person did in their home. I don't know if you're following what I'm saying. Have you ever done something like that with another person, just to teach them and make them understand, yeah, you were successful. We did do it, and help them to remember. Are you following what I'm trying to say?
yeah, sure,
Kind of.
definitely. Hmm. So I guess there are two things that I will touch on relating to that. Um, One is that during an astral projection, you are not experiencing the physical world, the physical dimension. Your consciousness is entering higher dimensions of reality. So you're no longer on this plane. So the idea of leaving your body and then observing something in this world is kind of missing the mark. Now, like I said, in the lower astral dimensions, they appear very similar to the physical world. And essentially, the closer the non physical dimension is to the physical dimension, um, the more similar it appears, almost like an energetic, like a spiritual reflection of the physical world. So, it's possible to see something during these projections, and it could be what is actually in the physical world, but chances are there's going to be at least some differences because you're not in the same level of reality anymore. And so, because of this, like experiments, like I'm going to write down a few numbers. I want you to leave your body and tell me what they are. Well, it's very difficult because you're not perceiving the same level of reality. But I mean, in terms of experiments with other people, like I've had out of body experiences with my wife on several occasions, and some people will ask me if I can come to their house and pull them out of body. Maybe they're struggling at having their own experiences and they want some assistance. But the issue with that is you need to have enough control and development over your own consciousness to be aware of the experience. So even if I come to you and pull you out of body, you probably will not be aware of that because your consciousness isn't able to gain the awareness of it. It's something that needs to be done like on one's own, and yeah, it's not an experience that can be had for you in a sense. So yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like that. If I come and pull you out of body, you're not going to remember it.
Okay, so you said that in these dimensions, there could be things that are the same and some things that are different. So are you telling me that there's possibility that there are other me's out there living a totally different life on a different dimension?
Well, um, who we are as spiritual beings is far more than what we perceive just here in the physical world. And so there are aspects of our own consciousness that are engaged in experiences at other levels of reality. And so it is possible to contact and interact with like higher levels of your own consciousness and the consciousness of other people. Um, but during these experiences, the individual who's like attuned here in this physical world is not going to have any recollection of these higher level experiences. But yeah, it's not quite like there's like an alternate version of you having a separate life, because it's kind of like your consciousness is so vast that one aspect of it is here in this physical world, and there are other aspects and higher levels of spiritual reality also engaged in activities. And so it's essentially a matter of connecting with these higher aspects of our consciousness.
Well, you mentioned that you can see deceased loved ones when you're journeying. You've mentioned that you've seen shadow beings, aliens, angels, ghosts. Can you please explain each one of these journeys and what it was that you experienced, please?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Deceased relatives. My first experience was meeting my deceased great grandmother, and I left my body and I stated the intention. I want to see my great grandmother. She had been dead for several years at that point. This was back in the beginning of my practice. And the next thing I knew, I was being launched through space. It was like some force was pulling me. and I was just flying past stars and planets, and it was so incredible. I didn't know where I was going, or why, but I stated this intention right before. I want to see my deceased great grandmother, and the next thing I know, I'm face to face with her, like out, like in the far reaches of space. We're just out in space, face to face, and we communicated, and it was a beautiful experience. And I experienced the reality, um, the fact that this was her, like without a shadow of a doubt. And this experience, it gave me an idea of how things work in these higher dimensions, and how things work, with our own consciousness. Because, like I said, I just made this statement of intent. I want to see her, and it was like I was brought to her. I didn't know how I was going to get to her. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know if I was even going to see her. Um, but it was like this experience unfolded, and what I came to learn was that, well, like I mentioned, we have these higher aspects of our own consciousness, and in these out of body experiences, you have a stronger connection with this higher level of our consciousness. And so, when you state an intention like that, sometimes, not always, but um, a lot of times, our higher self, this higher aspect of who we are, will lead us to have the experience that we desire. And so that's what happened then.
Did you have
Um,
a conversation with her?
yes. Yeah.
That's cool.
It it's it's more of a telepathic type of
Mm-hmm.
conversation. So you're not speaking words, but it's kind of like you link minds, and that's the nature of communication in the out of body state. So, like, you don't leave your body and walk out the door, right? It's like a more of a mental experience where you think like, I want to go here, and it's like you go there just with the intention through your mind and your thoughts. And so that's how everything works in general in these higher levels of reality. So you
It's
mentioned
kind of a
shadow
flow.
beings.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the shadow beings um, appeared in the very beginning of my practice, and yeah, they scared the crap out of me. I wasn't expecting to see a giant shadow entity. It was like 7 foot tall, and just like a big dark silhouette, just facing me. And yeah, it was really frightening. And these
What are they?
that's a good question. I'm not really sure what they are. They appear to be some kind of entity that exists in the lower astral dimensions. They appear to um, enjoy scaring astral projectors. They don't appear to actually harm anyone. I've never been harmed by them, and I've never heard of anyone else being harmed by them. It could be that they kind of get off on our fear, kind of like they feed off of that emotion. Um, but yeah, for quite some time, they would be there waiting for me as I left my body, and usually they would just be standing there, kind of just
Great.
looking intimidating. But sometimes they would come after me and try to grab me.
Mm.
And in the beginning, I would be afraid, and I would re-enter my body. I would just uh, have to remove myself from that situation because I didn't want any part of them. But eventually, I kind of gained control over this fear, and I learned to just ignore them and just go about my travel. And they left me unmolested. And like I said, these shadow beings seem to exist in the lowest dimensions. And what happens over time, with practice and development, you begin to project into higher and higher dimensions. So eventually, I started projecting into a higher dimension and completely bypassed the lower dimensions where they exist, and I just stopped encountering them.
Well, that's good. So you were able to avoid them as you progressed in your understanding of what you were doing.
Right. Hmm.
Do you fear death? Because, speaking to deceased loved ones and these scary shadow beings, it makes you think, am I going to die? And so I wonder, do you fear death?
Well, I fear death less than had I not, been able to gain this experience and understanding of how things work beyond this physical world. Yeah, I mean, there is always like that degree of uncertainty that can um, be a little scary. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. You don't know exactly how it's going to happen. You know, um, especially just the death process itself. Like, how am I going to die? Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be quick and easy?
Right,
These
right.
uncertainties, I think they can get under anyone's skin. But yeah, this practice gives you, firsthand knowledge and experience of what happens after death, and so that itself is very enlightening, and it can really serve to um, just improve your perspective of life and who you are and what this reality is all about.
I'm definitely one to believe that we're here on Earth. We can't be the only beings on the planet in the universe. So I do believe that aliens exist. And you've said that you've encountered aliens. Have you encountered one kind, many kinds?
Yeah, I have encountered many kinds of different aliens. Now I say aliens because they look like the typical alien that is portrayed, in our society, in this
I
culture.
was
Like,
going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that. Do they look like what we've been told that people have seen? So, yeah, I was going to ask you that.
yeah, the most common ones that I've seen all have similar features. Even the different groups have similar features. Typically, the large head, the big black slanted eyes, like small, skinny bodies. Um, and the different groups seem to have different agendas, and they have different degrees of like spiritual um, awareness. So for example, one group that I would experience quite often, they seem to be more of a negative group, um, and I've experienced others that were actually pretty enlightened. And so yeah, they're all different types, and they all have different game plans. In this one group, they had light orange skin, and they would surround me as I would leave my body, and they were really frightening. I got a really um, bad vibe from them. When you're out of body, um, you can sense energy almost directly. And so if you have an encounter with like a higher level enlightened being, you'll feel this energy of love and light from them. And if you have an encounter with a lower level negative entity, you will experience this lower level of energy as well. And so this was the experience I had with this one particular group. And yeah, I'm not sure why, but they had some interest in me. And yeah, I've had so many experiences with them. Um, I don't know where to start, but I've had some really enlightening experiences with other groups. Some of them have given me information about the nature of my past lives. And when I say past, it's not actually a past life, but it's actually a concurrent life in another system of reality. Um, some really wild stuff. Uh, I'll give you an example. This one um, this one entity, this an alien type being, appeared to me during one of my out of body experiences, and and a telepathic link opened between us, and suddenly I was flooded with knowledge and memories, and I started to remember that I am living another life as this alien, this species of alien, if you want to call it, in another level of reality. I am one of these aliens, and the entity that was with me during this experience um, was actually very close to me. Like I experienced this strong bond. Like we have this really strong relationship in this other life, and it's not a past life, but it's taking place the same time as this
So
life
we
that I'm
have we
living right
have
now.
multiple energy bodies and lives that are going on at the same time.
That is what I have experienced. Yeah,
Mm,
it's pretty wild.
interesting. Yeah, really. I mean, that we could be so um, divided in energy bodies. It just it's confusing. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Right.
Well, you
I've had
said that they.
experiences.
Sorry.
I've had experiences with um, what is called the higher self, and the higher self is essentially like the peak level culmination of who we are as spiritual entities, and these are who we are, like as like a fully realized consciousness at the highest level of our existence. And the idea is that who we are as these physical, beings and personalities is just such a small aspect of an actually much greater entity of consciousness. And so when you have an experience where you integrate or you merge with your higher self, and you tap into this highest level of consciousness that we are, um, you experience the fact that um, who you are as a physical individual is just one of many, many, many. And so reincarnation is actually taking place at the level of the highest self, the higher self, like more like simultaneously, because at that level, time is not a linear thing. So you experience all these other lives um, that that are yours,
That
but they're
was
not
going to be my
yours. It's
next
like,
question. That time is different than it is here. I was going to ask you that. So you're saying it's definitely not the same.
right, yeah, exactly. It seems like the lower you get down the spectrum of the system of reality, down into the lowest, the physical dimension, the more time seems to be in effect, right? So the higher you get, you can have experiences of just timelessness, and
Hmm.
so you'll at the level of the higher self, you have the experience that it's all taking place at the same time, even if here in the physical dimension it's taking place in different periods throughout history. It's actually all simultaneous at that higher level. And
So you can move through time. You can move to the past and into the future.
you have, yeah, you experience yourself in these different periods of time as
Oh, wow.
different individuals,
Hmm.
with completely different lives. and,
I
and
love
so
that.
the reincarnation idea isn't like a cyclical linear phenomenon, but um, it's like you don't die and then get reborn into a new body, but um, you do have kind of like simultaneous incarnations that you're connected with at the highest level of your consciousness. And so when you die, eventually we um, kind of remerge with a higher self, and we re-enter this highest state of consciousness in which all these different individual incarnations are one. And so there's not much difference in the cyclical idea and this simultaneous idea, um, aside from the fact that it's not like you're reborn again and you forget your previous lives.
So you know who you were in the past. You have a lot of memories of those.
Yeah, well, the thing is, during these experiences, it's like you're bombarded with all of this knowledge and experience and memory all at the same time. So really, like compartmentalizing it and extracting all the details from it, it's such a hard thing to do because these higher level experiences tend to be beyond our physical understandings and concepts. And so there's a type of translation process that takes place so that we can understand these higher level experiences, using, the database of physical experience that we have to draw from to make connections and understandings. Um, so for example, I can't say like, oh yeah, I was a farmer named Joe in the 1800s, right? But um, yeah, extracting details like that can be pretty difficult.
I see. Um, so ghosts. You said you've encountered ghosts. Have you had the opportunity to ask them why they just don't move on?
Um, no, I mean, um, typically, ghosts are are people who have died and they have some kind of attachment to something here in this physical world, and so they are kind of stuck in these lower dimensions that, like I mentioned, are just slightly higher than the physical world. So it looks like the physical world, but you're in a higher spiritual dimension, and they have some attachment that's keeping them there. And so there are ways to help these individuals to move on. It's called retrieval, soul retrieval. And essentially, what you do is um, you you call upon a type of spirit guide or an intermediary, which will come and assist the person into higher levels of non-physical reality. And it's a pretty interesting experience. But I've had experiences with ghosts, not just out of my body, but a little closer to home than that, you can say. During this one period in my life, I was living in a condominium with my wife, and we had recently moved in. And the previous owner of this condo was this old lady who had died. I believe she died just before we moved in. And this one night, I woke up and there was this horrifying like ghost lady. She was floating above me, so I was laying on my back, and she was like parallel to my body. Her face was in my face, and she was just like floating above me. But she looked hideous. Like she looked like a ghost in the sense that um, she was kind of like transparent, but you can see details, and like it seemed like she had like rotting flesh, and you can see like some of her bones through like rips in her skin, and it was just really really horrifying. And she became aware that I was aware of her, and her mouth opened and she let out this shriek. It just like boomed.
Great.
And the thing was, I was in like a deep meditative state, so I wasn't actually perceiving the physical world. I was tapped into the astral dimension, but I wasn't fully out of my body. Um, but so I had this experience with a ghost, and
We froze a little bit. I got the part about you not being actually out of your body at that point.
Right. Yeah. So this was just one experience that is related to this one this one encounter. Well, around that same time, we had other unusual experiences where my wife would wake up in the morning with hand marks on her arms, like red handprints, as if someone had been like squeezing her arms very tightly for an extended period of time. And it was so unusual because it wasn't me and it wasn't her, but these were clearly hand marks, and it just made no sense to us. And certain other unusual happenings around that time, we kind of started to put the pieces together. And what seems likely is that this was the previous owner of this condo who wasn't happy with us maybe like
Being
invading
there.
her territory in that
Sure.
sense.
I don't know if I told you, but I'm a paranormal investigator.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so I go on a lot of paranormal investigations, and that's probably exactly what it was. You were in her space and she didn't understand why you were there and she wasn't happy about it. And a lot of the time when people who are in a building and something like that happens, um, most of the time, if you just acknowledge that spirit and let them know why you're there and explain that they're, sometimes they don't even know they're dead, it usually rectifies the situation.
Hmm. Right,
But it's
right.
scary nonetheless because when they're mean, they can be mean, they can hurt you, and it's because they're angry and they're confused. So oftentimes when you guys get on the same page and you explain what's going on, it usually rectifies the situation. Not always, but often it does. The acknowledgement alone is a huge help.
Right. Yeah, that sounds a lot like the spirit retrievals that are done out of body. Like wow. Yes, you explain the situation, their situation, and you try to give them like another perspective of what's happening. And like you said, sometimes they don't know they're dead.
Right.
And and essentially you give them the opportunity to and the knowledge to kind of let go. And a lot of times they're brought to um, other levels of spiritual reality, and they can experience I don't know, they can get over um, get past that level that they were stuck at.
I usually like to, we describe it as trying to get them to go to the light, which is probably what you're describing as another plane of existence or reality. And if I explain to the spirit that if you go into that light, you can come back here anytime you want. But if you don't, then you're stuck and you can't go anywhere else. So you need to learn to accept that and be able to move on so that you can go and come as you please.
Yeah, yeah, that reminds me of how it works out in these non-physical realities, especially with entities of different levels, different qualities of consciousness and energy. And so like a lower level entity um, will not be able to enter a realm of uh, a higher frequency. um, it's just not possible to get there unless there's some kind of internal change within them that allows them to attune their own energy and consciousness to a higher level. Whereas like a higher level entity is able to go back down to lower levels. And I consider it similar to different levels of intelligence, let's say. So like a genius can conceive of the mental workings of a person of less intelligence, but a person of lower intelligence can't possibly conceive of the mental workings of a genius. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I see. And you said you mentioned angels. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've experienced quite a number of different angels over the years. One of the first ones was totally unexpected, but I I did this technique once I was out of my body to shift into a higher dimension, and when I did that, um, well, all of a sudden, this angel just came out of nowhere and just floated up right before me, and it was such a beautiful um, entity. Like it just like radiated and glistened with this light and love, and you can tell it was such like an enlightened being. It was very different from the other entities that I was used to seeing. And yeah, I've seen angels that so this first angel that I saw was a pretty normal size, right? Um, looked like a human, but I've seen other angels that have been huge, like hundreds of feet tall, and
Really?
these guys were incredibly like powerful, and this one in particular um, was a type of like fighter in a sense, like a spiritual warrior, and I witnessed that it was engaged in some kind of like spiritual warfare, and the size of it was just so massive. I'd never seen anything so big, and it was yeah, pretty crazy. A lot of interesting um beings out there. There's a lot to explore,
Mm.
and always something new to see.
So I'm guessing heaven and hell do exist.
Yeah, well, you know, how it works, as far as my experience and understanding goes, is that when we die, we project into a particular level of non-physical reality that we are attuned to, that is attuned to our consciousness and our energy. And so a person with a lower level consciousness, um, typically a person who um, would be considered a bad person, right? Perhaps they entertain, you know, hatred and fear and jealousy and all these negative emotions, and they act upon those habitually throughout their life. Well, they're going to be attracted to a lower level of non-physical reality, um, as will all these other people with this same state of being, and so they'll be in an afterlife dimension surrounded by similar people, well, all people who think and feel and act in these horrible ways, and so that's essentially what hell is, because it's not only you um, engage in this harmful behavior, but everyone else around you. So now you're the victim of what you uh, used to give out during your life. And the same goes
Justice.
with, sure. And yeah, the same goes with the heavenly dimensions. Well, uh, if you're a loving and kind and caring person, you will be elevated to a dimension that reflects that, surrounded by people who also reflect that, and so that's heaven right there.
Love that. Well, can you please tell my listeners about your book and where they can find it and any other pertinent information about finding you?
Sure, yeah. My book is called Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming: Spiritual Revelations and Out of Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. And you can find it on Amazon. It's in paperback, Kindle, audiobook formats. And you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. My username on all of them is Vincent Fields Author, all one word. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything or you just want to talk about the subject. I'd be happy to get in touch.
That's great. I love that. Thank you so much, Vincent, for being here with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And if you like listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, Check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Creepin' It Real podcast, out of the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, streamed through my YouTube channel, Eleanor Wagner. And if any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. I write about the history of the town and location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. Thank you again, Vince. I hope you enjoy our soundtrack music performed by Silent Crafter's Stranger Part 2 off the Stranger Part 2 album as it takes us out for the night.